Alright, hello fun and welcome back to Kottabos Space Program, where today we are having a look at the Luciole mod, which is being made by forum user Well. And what this glorious little piece of forklift stand into the game is a pretty impressively sized list of rocket parts geared towards building much smaller rockets that fit within that 0.625 meter radius category. And these are some pretty awesome things. So let's jump into the vehicle assembly building and have a look at what we do get. Now, considering the size here, let's actually grab a Octo 2 for size comparison's sake. Zoom on in there and select our mod filter, just leaving on Luciole. And we'll begin by, of course, looking at the command pods, where we have the first one here, and that is the L3T bot probe. Now, it's a very tiny little unmanned command pod, but has all the usual things of data transmitter, a reaction wheel, SAS, electric charge holding 50, and even a couple of solar panels, each of them producing 3 electric charge per minute. And it is a pretty awesome little thing, even tinier than the Octo 2. And what's really fun on this is we do have a couple of really nice variants. I think my favorite's actually the gold one. I normally don't care much for gold variants, but on this tiny little thing, I really like. Now, after this one, we do have a Cubesat that goes by the name L3U KED Cubesat. Now again, of course, it's an unmanned command pod with this tiny little thing. Once more with the usual data transmitter, reaction wheel, SAS. Once again, we have solar panels producing 3 electric charge per minute, but with a much smaller battery this time, only holding 25 electric charge. And if we pop it on, you can see it is even tinier than the previous one we were having a gander at there. And once again, we've got variants, but rather than color variants, it's size variants of the 1U standard Cubesat, 2U, and 3U, which is really nice. I do like that variation there. It's pretty neat. Now, after that, we have a, I was about to say more traditional command pod, but that's not true. That's the next one. The third one we have is the LA01 Ladybug Avionics. Now again, of course, it's an unmanned command pod with a data transmitter, reaction wheel, SAS, this one with 150 electric charge, and even a small supply of a 50 mono-propellant. And it's a pretty cool one here, resembling something like a decoupler, but is just a fun, nice little command pod. A very good looking, and with a black and a red texture variant. Very nice. Now, after that is now the more traditional command pod that actually holds a Kerbal. And it'll be one Kerbal, though, in this very tiny little LP Lanternfly command pod. Now again, like I said, holds 1 crew member, minimum of 1 and maximum of 1, has the usual data transmitter, reaction wheel, SAS, 200 electric charge, mono-propellant of 8, the usual science crew report, and even does have a small mono-propellant engine producing 25 kilonewtons of thrust. And it is gorgeous. I really do like this thing. And actually, I should mention a fun bit here. All of the parts in this mod are based off of some real-world concepts, like the French Zephyr. This one in particular is based off the command pod that was being designed by Copenhagen Suborbital, which is pretty neat, and I really do like this. It does have an interior extraordinarily cramped, as you would assume with a command pod this tiny. I mean, it's 0.625 meters in radius. That's gonna be a tight squeeze in there. But it is a pretty awesome looking little command pod. And I do love the engine ports down here for that monopropellant engine. Pretty darn cool. And for the texture variants here, we got a black and a white variant, which is very slick looking. I really do like the look of all the textures in this thing. Very well done. Now moving on from the command pods, let's hit into fuel tanks, where we've got a fair few, and I'm going to group them together in sort of their size categories of, sorts. And we'll start here with the LFT long fuel tank that also comes with a small fuel tank as well as a nano fuel tank. Now these ones, as you can see right here, are actually thinner than the .625 category, and both have either the black texture variant or a white and red texture variant to them, which is pretty cool, and not a whole lot of liquid fuel and oxidizer inside these things. I mean, the largest of the tanks holds 6.9 liquid fuel, the smallest holds 1.7, so yeah, you're not going to get a whole lot out of them, but considering the size, I mean, that just makes sense. And of course is perfect for a sort of radial tank to be attached to the, I say, larger .625 meter rockets here. So fun times. Now after that, we do go up to the .625 sizes with a couple of liquid fuel tanks here, being the LFT Rainbow Stag, the LFT Beetle, and the smallest of the three, the LFT Bumblebee. Now these, as you can see there, like I did mention, are with the more normal, larger size there. Again, like with every part, very good looking. We do have either the black or white and red texturing, and they are just some fun little tanks for you to use. I do very much enjoy these. Now, sticking with the .625 size, we're going to move on to some mono-propellant tanks now, where we have the LMT Greenfly monopropellant tank, as well as the LMT Flea small monopropellant fuel tank. And if we pop these babies on, you can see that they are, well, rather quite small, and once more do have those same sort of textures as the previous two engines, and like with every tank in here, not holding a whole lot of monopropellant, but more than enough for these tiny little rockets. They are quite cool though. And moving on, let's go to the engine category, where the first thing we've got in here is the LAE Dragonfly Aerospike engine. This one's pretty fun and produces 52 kilonewtons of thrust in vacuum with an ISP of 390 using liquid fuel and oxidizer, and has a gimbling range of 4 degrees. And if we pop that baby on, it is magnificent. Look at just all the things going on in this model. And texture-wise, it does have either the black or white variant there, and it's just a fun little aerospike. Now, next, we have the LEF Mosquito engine, not producing a lot of thrust here, with 6 kilonewtons in total, with an ISP of 310 using liquid fuel and oxidizer. A lot of gimbling on this, though, with 7 degrees. And if we pop this baby on, you can see it is a tiny little engine, and rather than having paint variants on this, it has shroud variants, where we either have the bare, an actual full shroud, or a truss mount, whichever you would like to go with there. So fun having those options. Now, the third engine we do have is the LEU Praying Mantis vacuum engine, producing 12 kilonewtons of thrust, 340 on the ISP, using liquid fuel and oxidizer. Again, we've got 7 degrees of vectoring, and if we pop it on, we're going to have a similar sort of experience with the different truss variants, but also does have a white and red one there. So if we bring that up, we've got the standard shroud, a truss mount, a bare version, and then the white and red, though it really doesn't look white now, does it? That really looks more black and red. But personally, I prefer that. Those are my 2 favorite colors. So, yay. And let's check that one off and move to the final engine, which I don't actually think should be in this category. It really should be up in the pods, because it's the LK Firefly Kick Stage, which is an unmanned command pod with the typical data transmitter, RCS built-in, reaction wheel, SAS. It has an electric charge of 150, monopropellant of 5, but yes, it does have a built-in engine using monopropellant to produce 4 kilonewtons of thrust. So why this thing isn't in the command pods, I don't know, but let's pop it on there. And it is a pretty cool looking little thing though. I do like it, and with the built-in RCS, it's pretty neat, and does have the either black or quote-unquote white and red, though this one actually does get some white, though it's to me more black and red considering the bulk of the color. But still, a fun, tiny little engine/command pod. There you go. Now, then in the command and control category, we have quite possibly the tiniest RCS engine I've ever seen, and that is the LR Pond Skater RCS, which will produce a thrust power of a 0.1, and yeah, it's the very tiny little RCS engine. Look at this thing. It's barely visible at all. It does have either a black or a white variant to it, though, for you to enjoy if you ever actually see it. It is a cool little thing, though. It's you can really put a lot of these on a ship and never notice because they're that small, but fun. So let's move on to the next. We're in structural. We've got a really cool addition for those Cubesats. I really do like those command pods. And this is the LPA Horned Atlas Cubesat Payload Adapter. So you can hold a lot of Cubesats for your launches. And if we pop this baby on here, this is the standard configuration, so we can fit 5 of the 1U Cubesats on there, but we can actually sort of change it around a bit, so it'll hold 4 and then have a sort of raised platform up at the top, and that raised platform just gets bigger with the 2U and a 3U version, basically giving you like a centered structural element for your larger or longer Cubesats rather. So a nice little thing. I do like it. Handy for launching those things into space. Now we got nothing in robotics, but in coupling we got a couple of objects. The first being the LD Cicada decoupler, which will provide you with 150 ejection force. Now let's actually just go straight over to the LD Cricket, which is probably the tiniest decoupler I've ever seen, with an ejection force of 1. And actually, let's pop both those on there so you can see them, and just the tiny size of the Cricket. Perfect for, you know, decoupling your Cubesats, but it is a very tiny little thing. Now, we do also have a docking port here with the LD Scarab docking port, which, well, is a docking node, and is perfectly sized for fitting on with these 0.625 meter parts. As you can see there, a very nice little thing. Now we also do get a radial decoupler in the form of the LRD Jewel Wings. Now these will give you an ejection force of 100 and are perfect for using those smaller fuel tanks we looked at earlier to use those as radial tanks there. And if we pop that on, again, just a nice tiny little decoupler, good for many uses. Now, then we're gonna move over to the payload category where we have 3 objects. The first being the LEM Honeybee engine mount. Now it is simply an engine mount. So if we pop this on here, you can see we've got quite a lot of attachment nodes in there. If we pop that there, we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 different attachment nodes for engines, and then a lower attachment node for you to then connect it to another inline section. And does have some texture variants of the shroud cover, and a bear version, so whichever of the 3 you do enjoy. I actually think I like that one the most. I like those little bits coming down like that. Very cool. Now after that we have 2 fun fairings to work with. The first being the LF Butterfly fairing, which is an unmanned command pod. Of course, a custom fairing, so you can change the size to whatever you need. Has built-in SAS and electric charge of 100. And if we pop that baby on, would help if I actually placed it correctly. There, oh, let's hold Alt for a change. There we go. And then of course we can build our little fairings there however we like, and I really do like the look of this thing overall. Very good design, a lot of neat little details to it. Let's pop that baby off though and have a look at the next one, which is the LFB Orchid Mantis fairing. Again, unmanned command pod, custom fairing, built-in SAS, and electric charge, this time of 150, so a lot bigger battery in this particular one. And pop that on, you can see it's much thicker than the previous version, thus, you know, the much larger battery there. But overall, still has all the same good details that make it a cool looking fairing. And after that, in the aerodynamics category, we got a couple of things. The first, kind of on par with a lot of parts here, quite possibly the tiniest wing I've ever seen, with the LF Renatra fin. It is a lifting surface with a relative wing area of 0.02. And if we just pop this onto our Octo 2, it looks like a tiny, tiny little hot dog. That's, there it is. Real small. I had to zoom in real far and mess around with the move tool to make that previous shot you just guys saw possible, because it's just that tiny. But once more, fits perfectly with the theme of this thing. It's just a tiny little fin. I love it. And then we do have two different nose cones, those being the LN Locust nose cone and the LNS Baby Locust nose cone. They're, just nose cones. If we pop on either of them, you know, they're just tiny little things, either with the black or the red, different coloring to them. But, yeah, they're nose cones. There you go. Now, after that, we've got nothing in ground, but in thermal, we've got the LH Goliath Heat Shield, which is an ablator with 50 ablator. It is a lifting surface providing 0.0875 relative wing area, is a separator with 50 ejection force, and if we pop it on here, it does have, let's flip this, just stick it like that, there we go. It does have the two different texture variants of black or brown in this case, which, again, looks more white to me, but let's actually pop it under there, and you can see it actually does look brown. But the shroud for it is indeed a white. But yeah, some nice color options there. Very fun. Now after that, we've got nothing in electrical, nothing in communication, nothing in science nor cargo, but down in utility we have our final two parts, both being parachutes, and those are going to be the LC walking stick parachute and the LCD walking leaf inline parachute. Now, they're both parachutes. Now, the walking leaf actually is also a decoupler with 20 ejection force, and both having the similar sort of texture variants of black or white. And if we pop these babies on here, there is the inline, and here is the nose cone one with one of the two texture options. Good times. All of these are beautiful, great parts that really help fill out a size category that's been largely forgotten both by the game as well as a lot of other mods out there. So I love seeing these tiny little parts. So let's actually take a look at one of the stock-made, well, I say stock-made, just one of the rockets made by the mod maker that he included with the download. So we have this lovely rocket here, the Luciole rescue pod, that does have some of the, the radial tanks over there. We're using that lanternfly command pod, so we can see that interior. And yeah, just some very cool things here. Some very fun parts. Let's go and launch it. Now, I do want to say right off the bat that when these engines start off, they're super loud, much louder than a lot of engines I've heard in this game. But once they get going, they really quiet down a bit. But let's first take a look at the interior view with Jebediah. And oh boy, it's cramped. Hope you are not claustrophobic with one of these things, because you are basically in a coffin. Good times. Let's jump out of there, though. A pretty basic little command pod, but I mean, what do you expect with that tiny of a casing? And all in all, just some really fun rocket parts with this thing. I have really enjoyed my time with this pack, as again, like I said, it's cool seeing these sorts of sizes finally get a lot of love with just a huge number of new parts, command pods, engines, all that sort of stuff. The Cubesats are a great addition. I've always loved seeing more of those in the game, and they're just well-made parts. Didn't mean to do flight results there. Let's bring the UI back and launch this baby off. And 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. There we go. Super loud when they first start, but then they calm down and make for some lovely rockets to launch. Now this thing can make it into orbit pretty darn easily, but let's just show off the various stages here and launch those out into oblivion. Let's cut that one and start up the next stage. There we go. Cut that one. Start up the next stage. There we go. Not the most powerful engine ever, but by this point you should really be in orbit. And we'll cut that engine, drop the nose cone, drop the bottom bit, and fire up the tiny mono-propellant engine on this little lanternfly command pod. And once we run out of the mono-propellant fuel, we got a parachute. Good times. Isn't it wonderful? I really do love this pack, and you guys should definitely all go take a look at this thing. Not only, like I said, is it cool to have all these new parts for smaller rockets, but I do love the fact that they're based off of some real-world designs, like I said, like Copenhagen suborbital here, the French Zephyr, and there's one other that I'm suddenly forgetting. It is listed on the mod page, though. A lot of awesome parts. Go check it out. Link is in the description as per usual, folks, but that is gonna be it for today. I hope you all have enjoyed and that you do come back for the next episode when hopefully we'll be looking at yet another wonderful mod. But until that time, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good one!